There will come a moment, not tomorrow, not next year, but far beyond any calendar, when Earth will take its final breath. Not in fire, not in war, but in silence. And when it happens, no one will be watching. This isn't science fiction. It's already written. The laws of physics have made the decision. The countdown is real, unstoppable, and invisible to most. The Earth, our home, our miracle, is on a path it cannot escape. One day, the oceans will vanish, the skies will turn still, and the blue planet will go dark. This is the story, no. One talks about not because it's too far away, but because it's too final. We live in the illusion of permanence. We think Earth will always be here, always breathing. But in truth, the sun is changing. The balance is slipping. And deep beneath your feet, the ending has already begun. No explosions, no alien invasions, just time. Relentless, quiet time, folding everything into one final chapter. What you're about to hear isn't a prediction, it's a map of Earth's future, 1 billion years from now. This is how the planet dies, not in chaos, but in rhythm, not in terror, but in peace. So close your eyes, lean in, forget where you are, because Earth is ready to speak, and its voice is fading. From the outside, Earth appears unchanged. The continents still move, the clouds still drift, and the oceans continue their eternal rhythm. But under the surface of this familiar calm, a quiet transformation has begun. It is not visible in the sky or heard in the wind, but it is happening. The end is already written, not in fire or chaos, but in physics. Deep within Earth's molten core, something is shifting. The magnetic field, Earth's invisible shield against deadly solar radiation, is weakening. Slowly, silently, it grows thinner. Solar winds that were once deflected now press a little closer. The planet's natural defenses are aging, step by step. Above, the sun is changing too. It looks the same to the naked eye, but science tells a different story. Its brightness is rising, bit by bit, as it burns through its hydrogen reserves. The heat that reaches Earth increases incrementally, not enough to panic a generation, but enough to matter over millennia. This isn't something that happens overnight. It takes millions of years for the effects to stack up. But already, the consequences are in motion. Glaciers are shrinking faster. Ice caps retreat into thinner and thinner sheets. Ocean levels rise, and with them, coastlines shift. What used to be considered stable climate zones begin to migrate. The Earth's atmosphere begins to respond. Patterns of rainfall start to change. Deserts slowly expand their territory. Forests adapt or vanish. Coral reefs bleach more often and recover less each time. The systems that hold ecosystems together are showing strain. Inside the crust, the convection currents that drive plate tectonics are still active, but less vigorous. The magnetic field loses its structure, and pole reversals become more likely. Earth's heartbeat, the geological rhythm that has shaped continents and oceans, starts to falter. Meanwhile, humanity carries on. Cities rise higher, technologies evolve, but most remain unaware of the slow ticking beneath their feet. The future doesn't come with a warning sign. It comes with numbers in a satellite's memory. It comes with tree rings, ice cores, and fossil records whispering a slow goodbye. As centuries pass, the balance Earth, once maintained, becomes harder to hold. With increased solar energy reaching the surface, the carbon cycle begins to shift. Soils dry faster. Forests struggle to replace what's lost. More wildfires emerge in regions where they were once rare. Ecosystems begin to crack under pressures they were never designed to handle. The oceans, Earth's great temperature regulators, are among the first to respond. Warming waters expand in volume. Currents shift their paths. Marine species begin migrating to deeper, cooler layers, or vanish entirely. Coral ecosystems, which support a vast chain of underwater life, lose their strength. Acidification creeps up quietly, reducing the ocean's ability to buffer the planet's changes. Meanwhile, the sun continues its steady transformation. Its hydrogen core shrinks and heats up, causing fusion to accelerate. With it comes more energy output, more heat, more radiation. To the naked eye, it still shines as it always has, but its spectrum shifts slightly enough to change how Earth absorbs sunlight. The very light that once fed plants now begins to stress them. Magnetic field measurements confirm what scientists feared. Earth's shield is continuing to decline. Satellites are exposed more frequently to solar interference. Auroras become more common, more widespread, beautiful, yes, but also a warning that the boundary between space and Earth is thinning. The planet's rotation slows ever so slightly. It's natural, caused by tidal forces and internal energy loss, but over long spans of time, the effect accumulates. Days become longer, seasons drift, climate rhythms grow irregular. The Earth's spin, once a metronome of life, begins to lose its steady beat. Eventually, the data becomes too consistent to ignore. Every major natural system, atmosphere, ocean, biosphere, geosphere, shows deviation. Some species begin to disappear. Others survive, but under strain. The chain that connects life to environment is loosening, one link at a time. And yet, to the average observer, Earth still feels alive. Skies are still blue. Trees still rustle in the wind. Rivers still flow. But the scaffolding behind it all is shifting. The world we knew is becoming less stable, more volatile, and that change is irreversible. Time, in the cosmic sense, is not emotional. It doesn't pause. It doesn't regret. It just moves forward, dragging planets, stars, and galaxies with it. Earth, like everything else, is caught in that motion. It had its beginning. It had its golden era, and now, silently, without violence, its long descent has begun. The future is not a sudden collapse. It's a long, quiet erosion of systems that once made life possible. A subtle unwinding of energy balances and environmental synchrony. A path that was always waiting to be walked. The countdown isn't loud. There is no ticking clock in the sky, but deep in the numbers, in the physics, in the shifting shadows of the world's patterns, the signal is clear. Earth's long goodbye has already started. 1 billion years is long enough to alter even the most resilient systems. During that time, the sun grows brighter by about 10% in energy output. Though the percentage seems small, its impact on Earth is anything but subtle. Every ecosystem, every cloud, every blade of grass begins to feel the shift. The sky, once a partner in sustaining life, becomes heavier, hotter, and more unpredictable. The heat doesn't arrive as a wave, but as a whisper. Solar radiation increases day by day, year by year, accumulating like pressure behind a dam. The atmosphere, sensitive to even minor changes in energy balance, begins to respond. Co-levels, once stabilized by photosynthetic life and oceanic absorption, begin fluctuating more frequently. The carbon sinks that held climate in check, forests, wetlands, permafrost, weaken or disappear entirely. The added heat accelerates evaporation from oceans, lakes, and soil. More water vapor enters the atmosphere, and with it, storm systems grow stronger. Hurricanes become larger and longer lasting. Rainfall becomes more extreme and erratic. Some regions flood endlessly, while others fall into prolonged drought. The reliable seasons, the cycles humans once built civilizations around, begin to lose their consistency. At first, plants try to keep up. Trees in temperate zones shift their growth patterns. Alpine species climb to higher altitudes. Some grasses adapt to dry conditions, developing deeper root systems. But climate is moving faster than biology. Photosynthesis begins to fail in regions where temperatures exceed thresholds. Crops collapse. Forests thin. Biodiversity weakens not from one cataclysm, but from constant strain. With rising heat, soils dry out. Microbial life in the topsoil suffers. Less organic matter is cycled, and the earth's natural fertility starts to degrade. Agricultural systems, even advanced ones, become harder to maintain. Irrigation grows unreliable as groundwater reserves deplete more rapidly than they replenish. Meanwhile, the oceans absorb a portion of the rising heat. Their surface temperatures climb, subtly at first, but permanently. Coral reefs, already weakened in the previous era, become ghosts of their former selves. Acidification increases. Food chains collapse from the bottom up as plankton populations decline, starving larger species in a cascade of loss. The sky itself begins to look different. With more water vapor, the clouds become thicker, denser, and more persistent. In many areas, overcast days stretch longer. Sunlight becomes both more intense and more diffuse, depending on location and elevation. The atmosphere takes on a strange duality, more light, yet less clarity. Climate zones shift rapidly on the geological timescale. What was once tropical becomes uninhabitable. What was temperate becomes arid. Polar regions, now warmer, are no longer safe havens. They're melting faster than ecosystems can adapt. The world map of habitability is redrawn, not over centuries, but in a matter of generations. The hydrological cycle enters a new phase. Rain falls faster, but less often. The gap between floods and droughts increases. Rivers become seasonal. Lakes dry and refill inconsistently. Glaciers, long-term water banks for billions, melt at such a rate that entire regions lose their primary freshwater sources. Storms take on a new character, not just stronger, but stranger, driven by new thermal imbalances and chaotic wind patterns. Lightning becomes more frequent. Tornadoes form in unexpected latitudes. Atmospheric rivers carry moisture in ways previously unseen. The planet's mood, once rhythmic, turns erratic. Even the deep ocean currents, the thermaline circulation that drives global climate, begin to waver. Fresh water from melting ice disrupts their flow, as these great underwater rivers slow. Global temperature regulation stumbles. Some areas freeze unexpectedly, others burn. The planet's thermostat is broken, and no one can reset it. Plants that once defined entire regions vanish. The Amazon is reduced to scattered patches of greenery. The Congo Basin becomes seasonal scrubland. Boreal forests retreat farther north, only to find permafrost no longer stable beneath them. The green lungs of Earth, once vast and vibrant, shrank with each passing millennium. Animals, too, are pushed to their limits. Migration paths become confused. Breeding seasons shift or fail. Those that cannot adapt quickly enough disappear. Mass extinction does not arrive with meteors. It arrives with sunlight, with temperature, with slow suffocation of once thriving environments. In human memory, climate once meant weather. Now it means collapse. Civilization adapts, builds higher walls, deeper wells, and smarter systems, but there's only so much that technology can offset. The fundamental rules of the biosphere are changing. The very sky above, that ancient protector and enabler of life, has turned volatile. Cities near coastlines are abandoned. Inland territories once known for agriculture become dusty and cracked. Populations move, but options shrink. Survival narrows from innovation to endurance. Science understands what's happening, but understanding does not grant control. The psychological toll grows with the environmental one. Cultures born of specific landscapes lose their roots as those lands transform. Ancient rivers run dry. Mountains lose their taps. Sacred trees die off. Identity, tradition, memory, all are forced to migrate, to adapt, or to be forgotten. Amidst all this, Earth continues its orbit. It still spins. It still tilts gently on its axis. The days still rise and fall in golden light. But everything beneath that sky is less certain than before. It is not a world ending in war or fire. It is a world becoming unfamiliar. The sun, indifferent and majestic, shines ever brighter. It is no villain, just a star, aging as stars do. But for Earth, that aging has consequences. The extra energy, harmless in a vacuum, becomes dangerous in the chemistry of air and water and life. What once gave birth to forests and oceans now accelerates their decline, and yet there's no sudden collapse. Earth resists, it adapts, it evolves, but the direction is clear. Every storm, every lost species, every shifted shoreline points the same way, toward instability. The planet that once held perfect balance is now wobbling. The sky grows hot, and under its glare, everything is forced to change. For billions of years, water defined Earth, oceans carved its continents, nurtured its climates, and cradled its life. But as the sun continues its slow brightening, that legacy begins to unravel. The oceans, once the blue heart of the planet, start to fade. It begins with acceleration. Higher solar output pushes global temperatures into a new range. The surface of the oceans absorbs more heat, increasing evaporation rates beyond anything Earth's systems were built to balance. The heat doesn't just warm the air, it draws moisture up into the sky with relentless force. Clouds begin to form more frequently. At first it seems like the planet is adapting. The thicker cloud cover reflects more sunlight, temporarily slowing the heating, but the water cycle becomes overloaded. Too much vapor rises too quickly. Storm systems become unstable. Thunder swell across continents, pouring torrents in some places while others remain parched. But this phase is short. As ocean levels drop, less water is available for the cycle. Eventually, the clouds themselves begin to fail. The skies turn patchy. Rain patterns collapse. What was once a planet of mist and monsoon becomes one of haze and stillness. Rivers begin to run dry, not just seasonally, but permanently. Snowpacks vanish from mountaintops. Watersheds that supported entire civilizations for millennia dwindle into scattered puddles. Great river systems like the Nile, the Amazon, and the Ganges retreat, leaving behind winding scars through cracked earth. Lakes disappear next. Even the largest inland seas, the Caspian, the Great Lakes, Lake Baikal, begin to evaporate into the air. What remains are wide plains of exposed sediment, salt crusts, and lifeless basins. The silence around them is heavy, as if the land itself is holding its breath. Human infrastructure collapses in response. Dams stand over empty valleys. Cities built on ancient shores are left stranded kilometers from any water source. Irrigation becomes impossible. Farming fails. Hydropower flickers out. And still, the skies offer no rain. As ocean levels fall, coastlines retreat hundreds of kilometers. Former seabeds become deserts. Marine habitats vanish, replaced by dunes and salt flats. Coral reefs, already bleached and broken, become fossilized on dry land. Fish populations collapse not just from acidification, but from the absence of water itself. The heat has other effects too. As the oceans shrink, their ability to regulate Earth's temperature diminishes. The planet becomes more volatile. Daytime temperatures soar, while nighttime temperatures plunge. There's no longer enough moisture in the air to buffer the extremes. What remains is a dry, trembling atmosphere full of light, but devoid of comfort. Life above ground falters. Amphibians vanish first, dependent, as they are, on water-rich environments. Reptiles follow. Mammals retreat into shrinking habitats. Near the few remaining freshwater pockets, birds begin to fall from the sky as migration routes dry out. Biodiversity, once thriving in wetlands and deltas, collapses into isolated fragments. The deep sea isn't spared. As surface waters evaporate, pressure changes disrupt deep ocean currents. Nutrient cycles stall. Entire ecosystems vanish in the blackness. Species that once thrived in darkness are cut off from the energy flowing down from above. Eventually, even the polar ice gives up. Antarctica becomes a desert of ancient rock. Greenland becomes a barren plateau, with no more snowfall. To sustain glaciers, even the planet's coldest regions grow dry. No fresh meltwater reaches the seas. The hydrological engine shuts down. The atmosphere itself begins to lose water. Without constant recycling from surface evaporation, water vapor levels drop. The stratosphere starts to accumulate moisture, a dangerous sign. Solar radiation breaks it apart into hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen, being light, escapes into space. Slowly, irreversibly, Earth is losing its water forever. Salt becomes the new soil. Across former seabeds, minerals crystallize into vast plains of white. Wind lifts them into the air, coating everything in fine reflective dust. The landscape begins to resemble Mars, dry, windswept, colorless. The memory of oceans is written only in layers of sediment and buried shells. Plants, which depend on both water and weather, are pushed to extinction in vast numbers. Grasslands vanish. Tropical forests retreat into high-altitude remnants. Cacti and hardy shrubs survive longest, but even they can't withstand the full collapse of rain. The world turns brown, then gray. Earth's skies grow clearer, but not in a hopeful way. With fewer clouds and less moisture, the planet is exposed fully to the sun's radiation. The ultraviolet light scorches the surface. Protective layers in the upper atmosphere degrade further. The world brightens, but it is a sterile, blinding light. As lakes become memories and rivers ghosts, human presence becomes scattered. Entire regions are abandoned. Populations migrate toward remaining mountain springs, cave aquifers, or artificial reservoirs buried underground. Technology struggles to maintain artificial climates, but Earth's heat outpaces innovation. Old maps lose their meaning. Where oceans once covered 2/3 of the planet, there are now endless valleys of salt, cracked clay, and dust storms. Navigation becomes unreliable. Landmarks change shape. Satellites still orbit, but they map a world that's forgetting what it used to be. And through it all, the Earth spins on. Gravity remains. Seasons technically continue, but the rhythms are hollow. The sounds of rushing water, falling rain, crashing waves, all are gone. Earth is still turning, still orbiting, still warmed by its star. But the soul of the planet is fading. This is not the end of Earth itself. The crust still holds. The atmosphere still lingers. The planet has not exploded, nor frozen, nor cracked. But what made Earth, Earth, the water, the life, the breath, is vanishing. The oceans begin to fade, and with them, so does memory. The death of green begins quietly. There is no great explosion, no loud collapse. It begins in the leaves, in the cells, in the sun-soaked chloroplasts that once fed the planet. Photosynthesis, the process that sustained life for over 3 billion years, begins to fail. At first, it's subtle. Plants start producing less oxygen. The rate of carbon absorption drops. Heat stress, unstable rainfall, and rising carbon dioxide levels combine to make photosynthesis inefficient. Enzymes that once thrived under narrow temperature bands become sluggish, then inactive. The machinery of life begins to slow. Trees lose their vibrancy. Leaves turn brown earlier in the year, fall faster, and return weaker. Entire forests begin to thin out. Tropical zones, once overflowing with color and humidity, dry out into hushed wastelands. The lungs of the earth, rainforests, wetlands, and grasslands collapse into silence. As green disappears, the effects ripple outward. Oxygen levels in the atmosphere begin a slow, measurable decline. For now, humans can still breathe, but the margin is shrinking. Atmospheric composition, once carefully balanced by plant life, begins to favor other gases. CO and methane rise unchecked. The air grows warmer, heavier, and thinner. Small plants and algae, which form the foundation of the food web, struggle to survive in the oceans. With surface water evaporated, and deep currents disrupted, they receive little light and fewer nutrients. The phytoplankton population collapses. Without them, the entire marine food chain begins to die off. On land, animals feel the shift in their lungs. Larger mammals are the first to suffer. Elephants, giraffes, big cat species that depend on vast territories and steady oxygen begin to decline. Their bodies, evolved for rich air and wide-open ecosystems, cannot adapt to the shrinking green world around them. The decline of oxygen also affects insects and birds. Pollinators vanish along with the flowers they once served. The symphony of buzzing, chirping, and calling that once echoed through jungles and grasslands is replaced by stillness. Ecosystems unravel not with drama, but with absence. Agriculture, already on the edge due to heat and water stress, begins to collapse entirely. Crops fail to germinate. Photosensitive plants misread signals from the atmosphere and die before maturity. Even engineered food systems can't keep pace with the fundamental breakdown of Earth's oxygen-generating network. As vegetation fails, landscapes change. Grasslands become dust plains. Forests become brittle thickets. Deserts spread their borders freely. The color palette of Earth shifts from green and blue to shades of brown, gray, and ash. The vibrancy of life becomes the monotony of decay. Without plant cover, soil erodes rapidly. Wind lifts topsoil into choking dust clouds. Rivers already dry fill not with water, but with sediment. The protective skin of the earth formed over millions of years by roots, moisture, and microbial life disintegrates in just a few centuries. Animal life enters a free fall. Herbivores die from starvation. Carnivores follow from the absence of prey. Species that once roamed in the millions are reduced to isolated individuals, clinging to the last green patches on mountain slopes or shaded canyons. Extinction becomes not the exception, but the rule. Human population drops alongside the wild. The last great cities, already strained from heat and water scarcity, begin to shrink. Efforts to manufacture oxygen underground or in domes continue. But the planet outside those walls grows increasingly inhospitable. What was once a living world is now a hostile shell. Evolution, which once sculpted the diversity of Earth, has no time to react. Genetic adaptation takes generations, but the world is changing faster than life can mutate. Organisms suited for one environment find themselves abandoned by it. Fragile creatures go first, then the sturdy ones. Then even the adaptable dot. And all the while, the sun keeps burning brighter. The light that once sparked photosynthesis now cooks the surface. What used to be the life-giving warmth of day has become a constant pressure, pushing biology out of balance. The feedback loops, more heat, less green, more carbon, more heat, intensify beyond reversal. Even underground life begins to fail. Fungi, bacteria, and insect colonies depended on organic material from above. With no roots, no fallen leaves, no decaying plant matter, the underground networks collapse. The soil dies. It doesn't just go quiet, it becomes sterile. The oceans are no better. With no oxygen production from algae, marine species that rely on respiration begin to die. Fish populations collapse in mass extinction events. Coral reefs, once the nurseries of marine life, become bone-white skeletons lost under warming tides. Earth's waters, what little remains grows still and empty. From space, Earth begins to look unfamiliar. The blue marble fades into dusty amber. The countenance, once painted in vibrant greens and browns, become uniform and barren. There are no more seasonal changes visible from orbit. No cloud forests, no algae blooms, no great migration trails. The planet has turned quiet. Life does not vanish all at once. Some microbial life remains in shaded regions, in cold caves, beneath the last ice pockets. But the web of life, the interconnected network of plants, animals, fungi, and insects that is unraveled, Earth is no longer a living world. It is a memory. Those who remain, if any, live underground, in sealed environments, dependent on machines for air, food, and light. Their survival is temporary. They are not part of Earth's ecosystem anymore. They are the last passengers aboard a world that has stopped breathing. The silence becomes universal. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, no movement in the underbrush. The Earth has gone still, not dead, but dormant. The biosphere is gone. The atmosphere remains, but thinner, unstable, and dry. This was not an accident. It was physics. The sun grew hotter. The atmosphere changed. Photosynthesis stopped, and with it, the engine of life turned off. Slowly, gracefully, but finally, Earth loses its color. What was once a planet of forests and oceans, flowers and grasses, now lies in muted shades. The green is gone, and with it, so is the breath of the world. For most of its life, the sun has been a stable, generous star. It gave warmth, light, and life. But now, after billions of years of quiet consistency, it begins to change. The hydrogen in its core depletes faster. The balance that held fusion steady starts to shift. And with that shift, the sun enters its version of middle age, brighter, hotter, and more unstable. Its surface grows more active. Sunspots become more frequent. Solar flares erupt with greater intensity. Streams of charged particles race outward, no longer occasional, but frequent. The quiet hum of solar radiation turns into a steady roar. Earth, once comfortably distant, now feels the pulse of this restless star like never before. Radiation levels in Earth's upper atmosphere begin to climb. The ultraviolet index, once a health warning on weather reports, becomes a permanent threat. The ozone layer, already weakened by centuries of human impact and solar interference, thins even more. The shield that once filtered harmful light now lets more of it through. Earth's magnetic field, its first line of defense, continues to weaken. Deep in the planet's outer core, the convection that generates this field slows down. The protective bubble surrounding Earth becomes patchy. Charged particles from solar storms, once deflected into auroras near the poles, now strike lower latitudes. Electronics malfunction. Satellites fail. Radiation reaches the ground in increasing doses. Daylight itself becomes dangerous. What was once nourishing becomes toxic. Skin burns faster. Eyes are damaged by overexposure. The concept of being outside during the day begins to change. Shade becomes essential. Protective suits become common in surviving human settlements. Life hides from the light. The upper atmosphere expands and contracts erratically due to heating, disrupting satellite orbits. GPS systems drift. Space debris multiplies. The orbital space around Earth becomes chaotic. Communications grow less reliable. Long-range missions face higher risks. Humanity's connection to the stars becomes fragile. Solar storms occasionally strike with extreme force. Massive coronal mass ejections slam into Earth's weakened shield. The planet's power grids collapse under the surge. Entire regions are plunged into blackout. Recovery takes months, sometimes years, and each time, the infrastructure is weaker than before. Animals sensitive to electromagnetic fields suffer. Migratory patterns break. Birds fail to navigate. Sea creatures wash ashore in mass strandings. The biological systems once synced with Earth's magnetic field lose their compass. Confusion replaces instinct. Temperatures rise even faster. The increased solar radiation doesn't just heat the atmosphere, it alters the chemical reactions in the air. More ozone is destroyed. The stratosphere changes. Weather patterns mutate. Jet streams wobble. Storm systems form in unexpected regions, with unpredictable paths. Plants, already in decline, suffer further. The few that remain must now withstand not just drought and CO imbalance, but direct UV damage. Their leaves scorch under the harsh daylight. Photosynthesis, in its final weak pockets, flickers out. The surface of the planet changes in appearance. Soil hardens into reflective crust. Roads and cities that still stand begin to deform under thermal expansion. The materials used by civilizations were never designed for this level of solar stress. Buildings crack, plastics melt, metal warps. The polar regions, once Earth's final cool refuges, heat rapidly. Without ice to reflect sunlight, they absorb it, creating superheated landmass. Permafrost collapses. Methane, once frozen in Arctic seabeds, is released into the air, amplifying the greenhouse effect. The planet is caught in a feedback spiral. It cannot escape. Water reservoirs still underground begin to evaporate. Deep aquifers lose volume. Surface wells run dry. The radiation causes chemical changes in water supplies, rendering some toxic. Survival requires purification tech far beyond the reach of scattered, declining populations. Even artificial systems begin to fail. Radiation disrupts. Electronics not hardened for such conditions. Computers crash. Data becomes corrupted. Servers go offline. Technology, once a crutch for civilization, buckles under the sun's aggression. The digital world starts to dissolve. With every passing century, the sun grows less forgiving. Its visible spectrum shifts. The blue sky fades into a bleached, white haze during the day. Sunsets turn crimson and purple, strange and violent in hue. Light no longer comforts. It dominates. It threatens. Underground habitats become the last viable places to live. Shielded by rock and artificial magnetism, small human outposts continue to operate, but their dependence on what remains of technology is absolute. The surface world, once home, is now an alien realm of heat, silence, and searing radiation. Crops can no longer be grown in open air. Photosensitive species are confined to controlled light environments. Genetically modified plants, designed to survive without real sunlight, become the only source of agriculture. These crops are functional, but lifeless, optimized for calories, not beauty. Fossils begin to form from today's dying species. Their bones settle into drying mud, their impressions preserved in scorched sediment. The next generation of geological layers is laid down not by life, but by its absence, by the ash, the dust, the sun-blasted ruins of ecosystems past. Geologic structures begin to shift again under thermal pressure. Rock expands. Mountains erode faster due to violent heat waves and thermal cracking. Earthquakes become more frequent as underground pressures fluctuate. The planet shakes, not in protest, but in exhaustion. From orbit, the change is stunning. The cloud systems are erratic, the oceans almost gone, the poles dark and dry. What was once the most vibrant planet in the solar system now glows with a strange brightness, not from vitality, but from exposure. Earth reflects more now, not because it's alive, but because it has been stripped bare, and through all of it, the sun continues, ancient, impersonal, radiant. It does not mean harm, it simply obeys its own physics. It is not angry, it is simply hotter, faster, closer in influence. Earth, once in harmony with its star, is now at its mercy. Radiation continues to rise. DNA damage increases in every surviving species. Mutations spike. Cancer rates in remaining populations soar. Many organisms fail to reproduce. Generational continuity breaks. Life becomes short, brittle, and unstable. Even bacteria begin to struggle. The last forms of life, often found in deep underground reservoirs, face the same problem: rising temperatures and a loss of chemical balance. The extremophiles that once lived in boiling vents and acidic pools now face environmental variables beyond even their tolerance. The sun was once a giver. Now it is a sculptor of ruin. Its fire has not gone rogue. It's just older, more intense. Earth, no longer shielded or shaded, takes the full brunt of its light. And in that light, most of what lived dies. Rain was once a rhythm, a pattern repeated across ages. It fed rivers, carved valleys, and gave breath to every corner of Earth. But now, it has become rare, strange, erratic, and finally, fatal. The planet's last storm systems form not to give life, but to say goodbye. The final rains are not gentle. They arrive as violence. As Earth's climate convulses, moisture trapped in the upper atmosphere releases suddenly in brief, destructive bursts. Instead of seasonal rainfalls, the world now sees flash floods. Walls of water tear through dry terrain, flooding lifeless valleys and erasing old landscapes in hours. The sky no longer carries water with balance. What little vapor remains is ripped from the surface by heat and scattered randomly by broken jet streams. Storms collapse under their own instability. Thunder echoes not in chorus, but in isolation. Lightning flashes across empty skies with no forest or city beneath it. Some of these last storms deliver acid rain, with atmospheric composition shifted toward carbon dioxide, sulfur, and nitrogen oxides. The water that falls burns more than it nourishes. Rocks hiss as it lands. Soil, already dead, becomes sterile. The last rainfall isn't a gift, it's a wound. These chemical-laced rains corrode what still stands. Ancient monuments, rusted infrastructure, and mountain faces wear away faster under the final deluge. The acid eats into stone, metal, and anything organic left exposed. In a matter of decades, recognizable features of Earth's built history are melted beyond recognition. Once the last of these rains fall, silence follows. No mist forms in the morning. No dew collects on withering plants. The hydrological cycle that powered ecosystems and weather systems is gone, with no more oceans to evaporate from, and no vegetation to transpire moisture. Earth becomes dry in every layer. The air itself changes. Humidity drops to near zero in most regions. The atmosphere, once a carrier of vapor, becomes thin and brittle. Breathing becomes harsher, not just from the lack of oxygen, but from the dryness that cracks lips and scars lungs. Air is no longer felt as soft it scrapes. Deserts, already expanding for centuries, now dominate the global landscape. What were once temperate zones become hot, open plains of dust. Sandstorms become more common than clouds. The soil loses its grip, rising into wind-blown sheets of grit that coat everything in layers of fine, powdery decay. Even the coldest regions of the planet are overtaken. Antarctica and Greenland, long vacated by ice, are no longer exceptions. To dryness, what little permafrost remains turns to stone. The poles become cracked deserts, mirror images of the equator. The last frontiers of cold moisture surrender. Vegetation disappears completely. Trees, grass, flowers, even hardy succulents have vanished. Without rain, root systems have nothing to seek. The last plant fossils form in the backs of caves, in dry riverbeds, and under collapsed cliff faces. These impressions will last longer than the plants themselves ever lived. Rivers become canyons. What were once wide channels of flowing water now exist only as memories in the land, long winding scars that twist through empty terrain. The sound of moving water, once constant in every biome, is now unknown. Lakes vanish without a trace. Many of them dried up over previous centuries, leaving behind salt flats and cracked basins. Now even those remnants are erased by wind and heat. The ground bakes under the sun, forming rock-hard crusts that flake into powder when touched. Groundwater sinks deeper and deeper, unreachable by any surface life. Aquifers empty. Underground springs cease their flow. The cooling, nourishing force that once trickled through stone and soil now retreats beyond use. Earth is no longer a planet of cycles, it is a planet of stasis. Surface temperatures spike, with no water vapor left to regulate heat through the greenhouse effect or cloud formation. The sun's energy hits the surface directly. Rocks fracture from thermal shock. Asphalt bubbles and peels. Metal warps and sags in open air. The landscape itself begins to deform under pressure. Human-built environments cannot withstand it. Structures fall apart not from war or neglect, but from sunlight and dryness. Cities collapse into their foundations. Concrete crumbles as moisture evaporates from deep inside. What remains is skeletal outlines of where life once gathered. The few underground shelters that persist rely on stored reserves, recycled systems, and sealed atmospheres. But the psychological impact of losing the sky weighs heavily. Generations grow up without rain, without even knowing what it felt like to hear it on a roof, or to smell it rising from warm soil. Earth's memory of water fades. The planet begins to forget its own identity. The oceans that once roared, the clouds that once danced, the rivers that cut through stone, all are gone. In their place lies silence, heat, stillness, and with the loss of water, erosion. See, the forces that shape the world's geography stop. There are no rivers to cut valleys, no rain to wear down mountains. Earth becomes geologically frozen, not in temperature, but in process. Change slows, life has ended, and now movement ends too. Dust replaces fog, sand replaces rain. Dry wind scours the surface, redistributing broken particles in endless repetition. Landscapes shift in form, but not in function. Nothing grows, nothing decays. Everything that exists now exists in stasis. Some features remain recognizable. Mountain ranges stand, though weathered. Crater scars from ancient impacts still pock the surface. Fossilized trees and marine skeletons remain buried in sediment. But no new features emerge. The planet no longer builds, it only preserves. And only what hasn't yet been shattered by sun and time. Atmospheric pressure drops. Without moisture or photosynthetic gases, Earth's air becomes thinner and stranger. Windstorms rage more frequently, unchecked by vegetation or moisture drag. Their speed increases, but their patterns lose meaning. They move dust, but they do not bring change. The clouds are gone. The sky, once blue and full of motion, becomes an endless white void during the day and black silence at night. Sunrise and sunset still occur, but they paint a dead world. There are no more rainbows, no more halos of mist. Light moves, but it is not reflected in life. Rain was the planet's breath. Its loss is suffocation. The chapter of Earth's rains closes, not with a storm, but with emptiness. And in that emptiness, the ground continues to crack. Earth still spins, but not as it once did. The rotation that defined day and night for billions of years has begun to slow. Imperceptible to the human eye at first, the change builds over millennia. The difference between one day and the next becomes measurable only across deep time, but the consequences accumulate. Without life to give purpose to the passage of time, the rotation becomes a hollow motion. There are no more circadian rhythms to align with, no plants opening at dawn, no predators stalking by moonlight, no migrations, no sleep cycles, no growth. Time still ticks, but nothing listens to it anymore. The moon, now farther from Earth than ever, continues to steal angular momentum from the planet. Its gravitational pull, once gentle and stabilizing, is now a slow drain. The tides it once created have faded away with the oceans, but its influence persists, nudging Earth's spin a little slower with every passing century. As the spin decelerates, days grow longer. What was once a 24-hour cycle stretches into 30 hours, then 40. Eventually, days last for weeks. Sunlight lingers on one side of the planet for far too long, searing the surface. The dark side, though still exposed to radiant heat, cools slightly, but it offers no real refuge. The balance that governed Earth's seasons also begins to collapse. With the biosphere gone, There's no feedback mechanism to stabilize temperature. Swings. Forests no longer absorb summer heat. Snow melt no longer triggers spring. The axis of the Earth starts to wobble more freely without its climatic anchors. This axial precession throws the planet's tilt into wider variations. Instead of a steady 23.5-degree angle, Earth rocks side to side over thousands of years, throwing whatever faint climate remains into chaos. If anyone were left to notice, they would see winters without cold, summers without warmth, and years without order, with seasons unraveled and daylight extended beyond anything natural. Surface temperatures reach unbearable highs, each elongated. Day becomes a superheated event, while each prolonged night stretches into a dry freeze. These are not days as once understood, but thermal events. Cycles of damage rather than motion. The mechanical clocks of surviving outposts no longer align with the sky. Timekeeping becomes internalized. Artificial time replaces solar time. Generations begin to lose track of how long a day truly is. For those few underground who may remain, Earth's original rhythm becomes a myth, a curiosity of the past. Geological processes also feel the change. The slowing rotation affects the distribution of mass across the planet. The equator begins to shrink slightly. The redistribution of crustal stress contributes to more seismic instability. Earthquakes become more frequent and irregular, though they no longer affect civilizations, only ruins. Volcanic activity, long part of Earth's deep cycles, continues but with strange new timing. Without seasonal snow to weigh down mountain ranges, or oceans to moderate tectonic stress, pressure builds in unusual places. When eruptions occur, they do so in silence, no observers, no warnings, only smoke and ash drifting into a dead sky. The planet's magnetic field, already fading, loses further stability. Generated by the motion of liquid iron in the core, it relies in part on Earth's spin. As that spin declines, so does the dynamo effect. The magnetic shield collapses more rapidly now, allowing more solar and cosmic radiation to reach the surface, unimpeded. This exposure damages even the geological record. Rocks that once held magnetic memory records of pole reversals and orientation become saturated with noise. The record of Earth's rotation and polarity begins to dissolve, leaving future explorers, if any ever come, with a puzzle full of missing pieces. The slow spin alters wind systems too. What little atmosphere remains stirs differently. Jet streams weaken or vanish. Air masses linger longer, making hot regions hotter and cold regions colder. The planet, once constantly refreshed by rotation-driven circulation, begins to stagnate. On the surface, the silence deepens. With no life to respond to the changing length of days, the only shifting shadows are those of crumbling structures, or slowly eroding rocks. Night and day exist only as extremes. There is no transition, no morning chorus, no twilight calls, just light and dark. Without photosynthesis to align to the sun, nothing turns toward it. No flowers follow its arc. No creatures wake with it. The sun becomes an indifferent presence, no longer a giver of life, but a spotlight that lingers far too long, burning what it touches. The psychological impact, for any sentient life still clinging to survival, is profound. Humans evolved to align with the planet's cycles. Our minds were shaped by the consistency of day and night. Now, with endless days and unpredictable seasons, sanity becomes a fragile concept. Time stretches, distorts, and breaks. The few remaining machines tracking Earth's spin note its decline. Atomic clocks maintain precision, but that precision is now detached from anything meaningful. Days can no longer be trusted as a measurement of rotation. The very definition of time, once linked to Earth's spins, now obsolete. Eventually, Earth will become tidally locked with the sun, just as the moon is to Earth now. One side will permanently face the light, baking endlessly, while the other, will freeze in permanent shadow. But that moment lies far in the future. For now, the spin continues, slow and dying. In geological time, this deceleration was always destined. Friction from ocean tides, gravitational drag, and internal processes made it inevitable, but without life to adapt, resist, or even acknowledge the change. It becomes a slow suffocation, a death not of motion, but of meaning. Earth, once a dynamic clockwork world, has become sluggish. Its movements are no longer coordinated by ecosystems, or echoed in life. The rhythm of sunrise and sunset, the most ancient heartbeat of the planet, is fading. In its place is inertia. Time doesn't stop. It stretches. Without minds to track it, or bodies to feel it, it becomes abstract. A number, a measurement, a concept, without context. Earth spins, but no one dances. The sky changes, but no one notices. Time flows, but it no longer matters. The dying spin doesn't announce itself with a crash. It continues, quietly, as though Earth is winding down from its long performance. The planet has played its part. Life rose, lived, and faded. The stage remains, slowly turning, long after the actors have exited, and so, Earth turns slower, older, emptier. The change begins slowly. From Earth's surface, it first appears as a subtle shift in the sun's color, a faint red-orange hue edging the golden white. Over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. The once familiar face of the sun begins to swell. Its outer layers expand as the hydrogen in its core runs low. The balance between gravity pulling in and fusion pushing out begins to fail. The sun enters its red giant phase, a transformation written into its future from the moment it was born. Its diameter stretches outward, growing hundreds of times larger. Eventually, its surface will reach as far as the current orbit of Mercury. Earth, though still at a distance, can feel the consequences with every rising degree. The glow intensifies. Even during what used to be nighttime, the sky is no longer dark. The red giant's extended atmosphere radiates enough light to cast eerie shadows across the surface, orange-tinted, deep, and long. There is no true night anymore, only varying levels of brightness. Earth's orbit is no longer stable. The sun's gravitational pull, now stretched across a much greater radius, begins to exert new influence on the planet's trajectory. Though still spinning and circling, Earth's path subtly decays, pulling it gradually inward. Over centuries, the distance shrinks, not dramatically, but persistently. Temperatures skyrocket. The increase is not linear. Each century brings a sharper curve. Earth's surface, already parched and lifeless, now begins to behave more like the interior of a furnace. The remaining crust heats enough to soften in some places. Dust turns to ash. Rock becomes brittle under stress. The atmosphere becomes a thin veil of unstable gases. Lacking vegetation, oceans, or a cooling cycle, it thickens with carbon dioxide and trace compounds. Sunlight now reaches the surface almost unfiltered. Ultraviolet and infrared radiation burn through what's left of the sky. The concept of breathable air is long obsolete. On a geological scale, tectonic activity becomes irregular. Some parts of the crust buckle under thermal expansion. Fault lines shift unpredictably. Volcanic eruptions burst with increased pressure, venting sulfur and metals into the atmosphere, but there's no rain to wash them out. The sky becomes permanently hazy, tinted red by both sunlight and planetary waste. What remains of Earth's surface starts to glaze. Sands in some regions fuse into rough glass. Valleys collapse under thermal erosion. Mountains deform. There are no more fresh landscapes, just old shapes, stretched and melted into unfamiliar forms. The red glow dominates everything. Structures left behind by civilization, satélites, solar panels, observatories, degrade rapidly. Radiation strips away their materials, molecule by molecule. The marks of humanity, long since abandoned, are erased by the heat and the unrelenting presence of the giant above. From Earth's perspective, the sun is no longer a disk in the sky, it is a looming force. It takes up more of the horizon with every passing millennium. Its surface roils with plasma waves and magnetic storms. Solar winds become relentless, pushing against the weakened magnetosphere with brute force. Radiation levels reach critical thresholds. No form of unshielded electronic system survives. Remaining human artifacts below ground, databanks, artificial biospheres, memory vaults begin to fail. Magnetic media are corrupted, solid-state systems fry. Digital history fades without ceremony. Time begins to feel slower, not because of any change in its flow, but because the long days stretch into almost constant exposure. Without night, there is no pause. The planet turns, but the red glow remains, as if caught in a single never-ending afternoon of decay. The moon, no longer a significant player, appears dim against the red sky. It reflects the deep hues of the star's outer shell, but adds nothing of its own. Tides are long gone. The lunar surface is now cracked and burnt, a silent witness orbiting a planet without motion or mood. Earth's gravitational interaction with the SON deepens as it draws closer. Orbital decay continues. The planet's path becomes more elliptical and unstable. Solar tides begin to pull harder at the crust. Minor deformation events become regular. Earth is now a planet being tugged, slowly, toward its end. There is no biological reaction to this stage. No cries, no migrations, no adaptation. Life ended long before. What remains is rock, atmosphere, and thermal pressure. The geological record continues, but it tells no living stories now. Only silence, pressure, and heat. The sun, nearing the peak of its red giant phase, becomes visibly distorted. Its rotation slows. Surface convulsions erupt in loops of plasma that stretch across millions of kilometers. These loops flicker across the red-ringed face like tendrils reaching for planets. Long dead Earth's inner layers begin to respond. Core temperatures rise slightly under increased external radiation. Mantle convection slows as the outer layers lose their thermal gradient. The planet starts to become geologically quiet, not because it's stable, but because it's nearing the end of its energy cycle. Space around Earth is no longer navigable. Solar radiation floods the region. The heliosphere itself begins to expand outward, swallowing planetary orbits in intense particle storms. Earth is now enveloped by the sun's atmosphere. It moves not around the sun, but inside it. Communication between any remaining satellites, probes, or deep space instruments breaks down. There is no data flow, no feedback. The universe around Earth may still exist, but the planet is isolated inside a furnace, cut off from space, motion, and time. The solar wind, now fierce and constant, scours the planet's upper crust. Any remaining atmosphere is stripped away. In streams, molecules of nitrogen, oxygen, and trace gases are pushed into space, never to return. Earth begins to bleed into the void. The visuals from space are stark. Earth glows faintly under the sun's massive presence. No longer blue, not even tan now. It reflects a faint metallic sheen, its surface superheated, glowing at the edge of melting. It no longer looks like a cradle of life, but a world under siege. And still, the red giant grows. Its outer envelope, composed of cooling hydrogen layers, expands and cools just enough to deepen its color further. From Earth's surface, it fills a significant portion of the sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. A constant dome of flame. There is no exact moment when Earth crosses a boundary into the sun's outer atmosphere. It happens subtly. The planet does not fall, it drifts, pulled slowly, inevitably, into layers of hotter and hotter plasma. At first, only the exosphere touches the outer corona, but that contact deepens. friction increases. Atmospheric drag begins not from air, but from ionized particles. Earth's orbital speed drops further. Gravity and resistance work together. The planet's descent into the star begins not with impact, but with immersion. Now, Earth is not just orbiting its star, it is sinking into it. The final phase has begun. The countdown to dissolution has started, and there is no longer any resistance left. The last layers of Earth's atmosphere hang loosely above the surface, barely clinging to the gravity that once held oceans and storms. The structure is no longer stable. It's thinning, stretching, and leaking into space at an accelerating rate. What remains is not breathable air, but a toxic mix of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and metallic particles. Pressure at sea level, once vital to human and animal survival, has dropped to near vacuum. Without the protection of a dense atmosphere, every region on Earth becomes exposed to space-like conditions. There's no longer enough gas to scatter light or regulate temperature. The blue sky has long disappeared. In its place is a dark red haze that barely shifts from day to day. Radiation pours in unfiltered. Ultraviolet rays, X-rays, and high-energy particles from the red giant sun bombard the surface with relentless force. Without an ozone layer, without a magnetosphere, without cloud cover, there is nothing to stop them. The surface is no longer merely hot. It's radioactive. What's left of the air is chemically corrosive. Acidic compounds, once diluted by water and life, now dominate the atmosphere. Sulfur dioxide reacts with trace moisture to form acid vapors. Ammonia and methane reappear briefly, released from deep underground reservoirs, only to be destroyed by solar radiation within hours. The air eats into what remains of the planet's crust. It rusts metal, pits rock, and breaks chemical bonds. Even non-living materials degrade under the constant attack. Surface compounds decompose layer by layer, eroding what little evidence of the past still remains. Any semblance of a weather system has ceased. There are no winds strong enough to cycle the air anymore. Without heat gradients driven by oceans and life, the atmosphere becomes stagnant, thin, still, and heavy with decay. It drifts above Earth like a dying breath that won't exhale. Sound no longer travels well. With air pressure this low, vibrations fade quickly. The planet, once filled with thunder, waves, voices, and engines, is now silent. Even a landslide or explosion would echo only faintly, muffled by a sky too thin to carry the noise. Micrometeoroids once vaporized by the atmosphere during entry, now strike the surface directly. Small rocks from space leave punctures across the ground. Earth has become vulnerable, exposed to every threat the cosmos offers. No more shield, no more filter. Radiation begins to alter the chemistry of the remaining minerals. Some rocks begin to glow faintly under constant bombardment. Others crack as internal bonds are broken. The soil, stripped of nutrients and microbes, becomes chemically alien. A sample taken now would resemble the crust of Venus more than the Earth of old. Water no longer exists in liquid form. Any moisture left near the surface sublimates instantly, turning from solid to vapor in seconds. Deep aquifers, once protected by rock, are either boiled away or vented through geothermal fractures. There is no longer a hydrosphere in any meaningful sense. Life-supporting gases like nitrogen and oxygen are either gone or converted into harmful compounds. There are no biosignatures in the air anymore. No organic molecules drifting through the sky. What remains is dead air, not just empty, but actively hostile to life. The thermal profile of the planet now mimics that of a scorched metal sphere. Temperatures swing from extreme highs on the sun-facing side to slightly less extreme but still deadly lows on the dark side. The thin atmosphere provides no insulation. Each location is burned during exposure and left brittle during shadow. Structures that were once buried begin to emerge as the surface erodes. Subterranean bunkers, ancient research labs, forgotten vaults, all now exposed to radiation and thin air. Their contents decay quickly upon exposure. Plastic crumbles, electronics fry, bones bleach and then vanish. The lack of atmospheric drag alters orbital dynamics for any remaining satellites. Space debris, unimpeded, crashes into the surface or drifts further into decaying orbits. There's no longer any protection against re-entry heat or descent impact. Everything that falls now lands hard. Earth begins to resemble a dying Mars, but hotter, denser, and far more radioactive. Its red sky is not from rusted dust, but from the glow of its nearby red giant. Its terrain is rougher, more fractured. Its history more complex, but its future, like Mars, is silence. Instruments, if any remained functional, would register spikes in gamma radiation, proton bursts, and solar particle fluxes. The planet is now under constant assault. No known life form, even in its most extremophile form, could survive for more than seconds on the surface. Magnetic field readings are near zero. The iron core still spins, but too slowly, too irregularly, to generate protective fields. What? Once guided compasses and shielded atmospheres has fallen quiet. The solar wind tears at Earth's outermost gases, with no resistance. The visual landscape is eerie. Cracked earth, scorched stone, and the ghost outlines of mountains fill the horizon. Shadows stretch farther than ever before, distorted by the low-angle glow of the massive red sun. There is no green, no blue, no signs of change. Just red, orange, and ash. Chemical reactions on the surface occur differently now. Without pressure, gases escape faster. Without water, reactions halt prematurely. Oxidation is slow and deep, driven not by moisture, but by high-energy radiation. Earth's chemistry no longer supports complexity, only disintegration. Every day, what remains of the atmosphere gets thinner. Solar drag pulls at the upper layers. Thermal escape drives molecules into space. Lighter elements flee first, hydrogen and helium long gone. Now, heavier gases like nitrogen begin to disappear. Carbon dioxide clings the longest, but even it cannot hold out forever. In the absence of an atmosphere, weathering slows. Erosion becomes a matter of violent bursts, impact craters, sudden thermal cracking, and deep seismic rumbles. The smooth process of atmospheric aging has given way to punctuated violence and long periods of silence. Auroras, once beautiful displays near the poles, no longer appear. Without a magnetosphere or dense air, charged particles from the sun no longer dance. They strike the surface directly, invisible but deadly. The upper sky is just a gradient from deep orange to black, with no spectacle in between. For Earth, the atmosphere was always more than just air. It was memory. Every storm, every cloud, every breath once carried traces of the past. Now, that past is gone, erased by heat, stripped by radiation, scattered by time. The final atmosphere is not one of transition, but of extinction. Eventually, the planet will lose even this toxic shell. Complete atmospheric escape is inevitable. The gases will drift into the outer envelope of the red giant sun, absorbed, ionized, and forgotten. Earth's last breath will not be seen, heard, or felt. It will simply vanish. The surface now bare reflects the red light back into space, but space no longer notices. Earth, once a planet of color, sound, and motion, is now a silent rock, tumbling slowly toward its final destination. The end does not arrive in an instant. There is no explosion, no shattering collapse. The final moment is quiet, as if the planet exhales one last time and simply does not inhale again. Earth's last molecules of atmosphere drift upward, pulled gently by solar winds and thermal escape. One by one they break free. These final gases are not oxygen or nitrogen. Those were lost long ago. What remains are trace elements, xenon, argon, the heaviest and most stubborn fragments of air. Even these, under the immense energy pouring from the red giant sun, cannot hold on. Radiation strips electrons from atoms. Solar pressure pushes the fragments away. There is no resistance. There is nothing left to hold them. At ground level, there is no air, no breeze, no pressure. Sound cannot travel. Flames cannot burn. The atmosphere is gone. The sky is not blue, not gray, not even red. It is simply absent, an exposed cosmic background pierced by the blinding proximity of the sun. Earth has become a world without breath. No water remains in any form, even in deep, protected caverns. All traces of moisture have either boiled off or broken apart into hydrogen and oxygen, both of which escaped to space long before. There is no ice, no vapor, no memory of rain. The surface is completely sterilized. It is no longer just lifeless. It is uninhabitable at every level. Radiation has penetrated every layer of soil, every crack in the rock, every buried vault. Even the shadows are deadly. The crust has been scorched to a uniform dullness. Temperatures rise and fall with orbital position, but always above survival thresholds. The magnetic field is extinct. The core still spins weakly, but it no longer generates meaningful motion. No lines of magnetic force stretch from pole to pole. Compasses would spin aimlessly, if any still functioned. Cosmic rays pass directly through the atmosphereless sky, striking the surface without deflection. Orbiting the sun, Earth now resembles a burnt ember, dark, featureless, radiating faint heat. There are no more seasons, no night, no day. The sky no longer turns because it no longer matters. The red giant star fills the horizon at all times. It is not a sun anymore. It is a wall of fire. Any remnants of human civilization are gone. Satellites have long since decayed or been incinerated. Space stations fell, burnt, or drifted away. Underground facilities collapsed from tectonic stress or melted from geothermal instability. Artificial materials have decomposed under solar stress and atomic bombardment. Earth has shed the last signs of its former inhabitants. Even geology is now slow and muted. Plate tectonics have stalled. Volcanism has subsided. The planet's inner heat still exists, but without a hydrological cycle to drive pressure balances. The outer crust is locked. No more quakes. No more eruptions. Earth has entered geological retirement. Instruments that might observe Earth from afar would see no activity, no chemical traces of life, no emissions, no industrial gases, no chlorophyll. Signatures. The blue marble has turned gray-black. To any distant observer, Earth is now indistinguishable from a lifeless moon or minor planet, quiet, still, and unchanging. Yet despite everything, it remains. Earth does not shatter. It does not fall into the sun. It stays in orbit, decaying slowly, yes, but stable for now. The planet persists as a physical object, even if everything that gave it meaning is gone. And in that orbit, it carries memory, not in thought, not in story, but in structure. The layers of its crust still hold chemical records. Rocks still bear the scars of rivers, the outlines of fossil beds, the sediment of vanished oceans. The bones of the past are not visible, but they are there. The planet continues to turn. There is no life to mark time, no calendars, no clocks, but Earth spins on, completing revolutions around a dying star. Time still exists here, though it is empty. It is a time without change, without growth, without witness. And so, the world that once hosted oceans, forests, languages, cities, and dreams becomes a dead archive. Its last breath long gone. It offers no sign of what it once was, but it moves. It turns. It waits. That is the final stage of Earth. Not dramatic, not explosive, but still. And in its stillness, it remembers. The escape of Earth's final atmospheric molecules is not a dramatic event. It does not come with noise, with flash, or with collapse. It happens molecule by molecule, atom by atom, a slow, inevitable exhale into space. These last remnants are not part of any system anymore. They are not oxygen meant for breathing or water vapor rising into clouds. They are fragments, scattered by radiation, flung into the solar wind, lost to the void. With them goes pressure. With them goes resistance. Earth is no longer wrapped in a protective blanket of gases. It is naked now, a surface directly exposed to the vastness of space and the overwhelming radiation of the red giant star. There is no longer any medium through which wind can blow, through which waves can rise, or through which sound can travel. The planet is silent, permanently. Temperatures on the surface remain extreme. The absence of atmosphere means there's no buffer, no delay between exposure and consequence. The sun-facing side of Earth is seared by direct heat, its surface rising to thousands of degrees. The far side, in relative shadow, is only marginally cooler, not because of any cooling process, but simply from temporary escape from the blast of radiation. There is no longer a sky. What hovers above Earth is not blue, nor even red. It is space itself, a burnt orange radiance cast by the sun's swollen body, stretching across what used to be sky. No weather, no clouds, no storms, just the blazing presence of a star that has outgrown its system. Oceans, rivers, lakes, all are distant memories now. Even their beds have been erased, reshaped, or vitrified. The crust has no fluid left inside it. There are no aquifers, no underground ice, no seasonal melt. Earth's hydrosphere is not just gone, it is unrecoverable. The planet cannot hold water anymore, not even deep within. Life, in every form, has vanished. Microbial colonies that once lived miles beneath the surface, deep extremophiles near volcanic vents, all have been sterilized. The radiation dose across all altitudes and depths has exceeded survivability. There are no spores waiting in silence, no seeds buried in hope. Earth is biologically null. The crust, though still intact, is no longer geologically alive. The mantle has slowed its motion. The core has become increasingly static. Without fluid outer core movement, no magnetic field remains. Without plate tectonics, no new mountains rise, no trenches form, no subduction occurs. It is a planet with no inner breath, geologically, biologically, atmospherically dead. Solar radiation continues to sculpt the planet's outermost layer. Ionized particles smash into the crust, knocking atoms loose. This slow atomic erosion gradually thins the surface. It does not destroy it in large chunks, but shaves it, one particle at a time. A process that will continue for millions of years. All surface features have lost contrast. Colors have faded into a uniform gray-black. Without atmosphere, oxidation has stopped. Without water, erosion has ended. Earth's surface is no longer changing in familiar ways. Only radiation and heat reshape it now. Slow, relentless forces that care nothing for history. From space, Earth appears as a scorched sphere, its silhouette dwarfed by the proximity of the swollen red sun. It reflects almost no light. The albedo is low. No clouds to scatter, no ice to shine, no oceans to glimmer. What light it does send back into space is infrared, dull, and weak. Earth has become a ghost. Even the orbit now feels different. Earth, still bound by gravity, continues its elliptical path, but with increasing drag. The sun's expanding envelope stretches farther each year, touching the edges of Earth's orbital path. Friction begins to affect motion. The decay is slow, but it has begun. Humanity's marks, all traces of civilization, are now absent. Satellites have vaporized. Cities have disintegrated. Data centers, machines, monuments, they all succumbed to temperature, corrosion, and decay long ago. Earth carries no signs of its past species. It is clean, in the most final way possible, and yet, it still drifts. It still turns. Earth spins on its axis, not as a function of life or purpose, but as a simple outcome of momentum. It continues to circle the red giant, not out of choice, but inertia. The universe has not stopped Earth, it has merely silenced it. Memory remains. Not in the conscious sense, not in mind or machine, but in matter. The planet still holds fossils, mineral traces, geologic formations that once supported oceans, forests, and civilizations. These features are hidden beneath heat-altered crusts and radiation-blasted hills, but they exist. Earth, as an object, remembers. No observer nearby would recognize it as a former home to life. No spacecraft passing at high speed would detect a signature of humanity. To all appearances, it is a dead world, a hot rock skimming the edge of a dying star. Only through detailed analysis, or perhaps time reversal, could one know what it once held. This is Earth's final state, burned, silent, dry, and alone. It has no atmosphere. It has no magnetic field. It has no biosphere. And yet, it continues physically intact, orbiting steadily. For now, it resists disintegration. It remains whole, if not alive. Its resistance is not permanent. The sun's envelope will continue to grow. The temperature will continue to rise. Eventually, Earth will move from orbiting just outside the red giant's surface to entering it. But that stage has not yet come. For now, the planet still floats in free space. There is no celebration of this endurance. There is no drama in its silence. It is simply motion, a burned shell, carrying the fossil of a once living world. And though its systems are shut down, its process is over. It continues to move forward in time and space. One rotation follows another. One orbit leads into the next. These cycles are meaningless now, but they continue. Earth has no one to witness its turns, no system to count its years. Yet it turns, anyway, repeating the rhythm it learned long before life ever began. In that turning, perhaps there is a kind of honor, not purpose, not fate, but continuity. Earth cannot recover what it has lost, but it has not collapsed into dust. It is still a world, still a planet, still here. That is Earth's last breath, not a sound, not a gust, but a quiet persistence in the face of absolute emptiness. The breath has ended, but the drift continues. Billions of years pass beyond Earth's last breath. The red giant's sun, having expanded far beyond its original size, eventually reaches a limit. It collapses inward, ejecting its outer layers and leaving behind a white dwarf, a dense, hot core glowing faintly in the remains of its former brilliance. This new star emits no solar wind strong enough to maintain Earth's orbit. The gravitational balance has shifted. By this point, Earth is no longer recognizable. The surface has melted, hardened, shattered, and baked repeatedly under solar extremes. The crust is fractured. The mantle is solid. The planet's density has increased slightly due to compression and radiation-driven mineral changes. But functionally, Earth is dead. It has been dead for billions of years. The change in mass and radiation from the now white dwarf sun destabilizes what's left of Earth's orbit. For some remnants of the solar system, this shift ejects them. They drift outward, out of gravitational grasp, into interstellar space. For others, especially those closer, it becomes a slow spiral inward, toward the dim light of the collapsed star. Earth, now little more than debris, teeters between these fates. If Earth drifts outward, it joins the frozen corpses of other planets and moons, destined to float endlessly through the galaxy. It will no longer orbit a star. It will have no seasons, no heat, no meaningful change. It will be a cold, silent rock, carrying the compressed mineral memory of what it once was. Over trillions of years, collisions or gravitational pulls from nearby stars may finally scatter or break it, or it may survive, aimless, invisible. If Earth falls inward instead, its path ends at the white dwarf. Though small in size, the star's gravity is immense. As Earth approaches, tidal forces begin to crack its hardened shell. Fragmentation begins. The planet starts to break apart, layer by layer, before being pulled into the white dwarf's atmosphere. The infall creates flares, brief but powerful, but no one is left to see them. In either case, whether flung out or swallowed, Earth's physical body disappears from relevance. There are no more tectonic plates, no core, no moon, no system of balance. What was once a planet of forests and skies, oceans and civilizations, now exists as either dust in a cold void or fragments spinning around a collapsed star. No technology survived, no signal remains. If any civilization ever tried to preserve memory in machines, satellites, time capsules, or data crystals, they were either incinerated, erased by radiation, or decayed over billions of years. Physical matter cannot carry stories forever. The information decays. Entropy always wins. But Earth's existence is not entirely forgotten. In the structure of the white dwarf, in the patterns of its light, and in the precise chemistry of distant stellar clouds, there are clues. Spectrometers from alien worlds, if pointed carefully, might detect odd elements, traces of carbon, oxygen, metals, arranged in ways that suggest Earth once was. But these would not be seen as messages. They would be data, cold and incomplete. From an outside observer's point of view, assuming intelligent life ever arises elsewhere, Earth would be a curiosity, a planetary corpse among billions. A system with no energy, no notable orbitals, no visible activity. Its history would be unknowable. There would be no signal, no beacon, no voice from the past. And yet, in a broader sense, Earth becomes part of something larger. Its atoms, scattered by stellar winds or vaporized by stellar collapse, re-enter galactic circulation. Over the eons, these atoms mix with others, forming nebulae, seeding the next generation of stars and planets. In this way, the matter that once made Earth is not gone, it is simply transformed. There is no consciousness in this transformation, no purpose, no design. But still, the calcium from ancient bones, the iron from blood, the carbon from leaves, the silicon from circuits, all of it spreads outward. Somewhere in the distant future, those same elements might help build a new planet, a new cell, a new thought. The Milky Way continues to rotate. Stars are born and die. Galaxies collide. The universe itself stretches cold and long. And Earth, once so vibrant, so full of detail and complexity, becomes a line in that movement. A small chemical whisper in the orchestra of stars. At some point, even the white dwarf that was once our sun will cool. It will dim into a black dwarf, invisible and inert. All energy from the star will cease. The system that once housed 8 planets and countless moons will be a graveyard of frozen remnants and scattered dust. Time will continue, but light, sound, and warmth will not. Earth, then, becomes a memory only to the universe, not in mind, but in mass, not in voice, but in orbit. Its former beauty, its story, its rise and fall, none of it survives in traditional sense. The planet no longer exists as a place. It has become a story without a speaker. And yet, stories do not always require voices. Sometimes, they live. In silence, in the way particles drift, in the elements that combine again, in the symmetry of broken things. Earth's story is not erased. It is absorbed by the stars, by time, by space itself. What remains in the dark is not Earth. It is what Earth once meant, what it carried, what it made possible. The echoes of its life exist now only as potential, scattered across the fabric of the galaxy. Perhaps, billions of years later, on some other world, life will emerge. It may build its own knowledge, discover its own physics, wonder about distant planets that once were. Maybe, just maybe, it will detect a chemical anomaly, a small disturbance in the pattern, and ask, what was this? And the answer will not be a name. It will not be a date. It will not be a memory. The answer will simply be, once there was a place. Now there is only motion. Earth was real, and now it is gone, but the story remains in the dark.